Good morning, Mr. Sullivan. If you're available for a mic check, will you please unmute?
How is that?
Doing all right. Say something else for me. How's the day going so far?
Is this coming across loud enough and clear or not?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we will open this meeting of the Multidisciplinary Committee and bring it to order. And first, we will go to agenda item number 1, roll call.
Dr. Waterhouse?
Present.
Ms. Bowler is absent today. Dr. Getkin?
Here.
Dr. Nunez?
Here.
Ms. Pulowski?
Here.
Ms. Schafelt?
Here.
Dr. Solcito?
Here.
Dr. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Esri?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Agenda item number 2, public comment for items not on the agenda. Moderator, could you open it?
Absolutely. I assume you are not taking public comment in the room first?
Well, there's nobody coming forth.
Understood. All
And-
right. For our WebEx participants, now is the time to raise your hand. You can do so by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. People will be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for comments not on the agenda. And I'm going to repeat that for our new joiners. Now we are taking public for items not on the agenda. Now is the time to raise your hand. This is agenda item 2. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. Okay, on to the next agenda item, the committee chair report.
Let's
First,
do
I'd
the
like
meeting minutes first. Just a quick,
meeting
just
minutes.
a quick announcement. The members know, but for the sake of stakeholders and the public, there have been a number of concerns raised about the minutes themselves. And so we're going to pull these minutes and take a look to make sure that the summaries are accurately reflecting the complete discussions. So we'll bring it back to you in April.
Okay, now on to the committee chair report. First, I'd like to give a thank you to Marie Uzri, who's had a great year of leadership, and I appreciate your skill and everything that you've done for this committee. During the October board meeting, the former MDC chair, Marie, provided an overview of the MDC's meeting the day before. After hearing the overview of the animal balance presentation and MDC discussion, the board discussed MASH-style clinics and directed the MDC to research the issue further and consider whether regulatory amendments should occur to allow MASH-style operations to continue. Ms. Uzri then provided an overview of the shelter community challenges shared with the MDC. In response, the board directed the MDC to gather more information about available options to assist the shelter community and prepare potential legislative frameworks. The board further directed the MDC to focus on ensuring any proposal includes clear safeguards and effectively addresses the shelter workforce crisis. This will be discussed more during the agenda item 5B. Ms. Uzri shared the concerns raised regarding premises registrations and licensee managers. The board agreed with the MDC to proceed with researching this further and directed the MDC to bring recommendations back to the board at a future meeting. Ms. Uzri continued with her overview by sharing the MDC's discussion on the challenges related to the condition-specific VCPR language. The board agreed with the MDC and directed them to proceed with developing recommendations for removing the condition-specific language. This will be discussed more during agenda item 5A. And the status on pending regulations. The minimum standards for alternate veterinary premises, OAL approved, and it was effective last January 1st. Drug compounding, the OAL is approved and it's effective on April 1st. Medical records, civil penalties for citations and RVT registration pathways. Board staff is currently working on these rulemaking packages and plan to submit them to DCA in the next couple of months. And there is an executive subcommittee meeting, which is myself and Jessica and Kathy Bowler. And we meet monthly, and our next monthly meeting is on February 23rd. So that completes my report. On to agenda item number 5. Oh, sorry, we need to do public comment on that too, don't we? Public comment in the room. Seeing none, public comment. Moderator, could you open up public comment?
WebEx, now is the time for public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. As stated previously, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. So agenda item number 5, update, discussion, and possible action on recommendations from the Veterinary Practice Subcommittee.
Okay, I will start with item 5A, legislative proposal to amend BPC sections 4825.1, 4826.6, 4830, and 4840.5 regarding the veterinary client-patient relationship and electronic veterinary services. A little background on that. At its October 2025 meeting, the MDC reviewed concerns about condition-specific VCPR requirements and agreed the language should be updated to better reflect real-world practice. The MDC supported removing condition-specific language and instead adding a time-based requirement such as every 12 months. This would apply to all prescriptions and align with controlled substance rules. There is general agreement that professional judgment should remain central, with additional safeguards such as time limits to balance access and protection. During public comment, CVMA shared that they were considering legislation to remove condition-specific language and shift to a patient-specific VCPR. The board agreed that the MDC should move forward with developing recommendations to remove condition-specific VCPR language. Since then, CVMA, San Francisco SPCA, and the San Diego Humane Society have expressed alignment with the board's direction. The board's executive officer requested, and the groups accepted, to co-sponsor the legislation. That way, everyone can work closely together on a single bill rather than two competing pieces of legislation. The subcommittee and co-sponsors met multiple times to develop the attached legislative proposal. This proposal not only shifts the condition-specific VCPR to patient-specific, but also integrates previously approved telemedicine-related definitions and concepts. By doing so, this proposal removes the unintentionally narrowed telehealth scope created by AB 1399 and aligns terminology with industry standards. This memo summarizes all changes that the proposal accomplishes. Rather than detailing every modification, including purely renumbering or technical changes, I am going to focus on the substantive changes introduced by the proposal. For definitions, it introduces new definitions for electronic communication technology, HERD, teleconsultation, telemedicine, and teletriage. It reorganizes into alphabetical order existing definitions for animal, client, and diagnosis. And it removes the definition of synchronous and telehealth as separate terms, integrating their meanings into new definitions. It also adds a rabies exemption from previously board-approved language, exempting rabies vaccination administration from the VCPR requirement to prevent disease or loss of life. For the VCPR, it removes the condition-specific language from subdivision A2 by striking to initiate at least a general or preliminary diagnosis of the animal patient's medical condition. It moves the client communication requirement to establish the VCPR in subdivision A3 to a separate requirement in new subdivision D to be maintained throughout the lifespan of the VCPR as follows. So we'll read 3. The veterinarian has assumed responsibility for making medical judgments regarding the health of the animal patient. And the new D is the veterinarian shall communicate with the client a medical treatment, diagnostic, or therapeutic plan for each medical condition for which the veterinarian may prescribe, dispense, or administer treatment of whatever nature under the veterinary client-patient relationship. If the medical treatment, diagnostic, or therapeutic plan for medical condition changes from that which was initially communicated to the client, then the veterinarian must attempt to communicate the necessary changes with the client in a timely manner. Since multiple conditions can be treated under the same VCPR, the veterinarian must communicate with the client the initial treatment plan for each medical condition and attempt to communicate any changes to the plan in a timely manner. It adds a new subdivision K to establish a 1-year VCPR expiration, 6-month VCPR expiration after a synchronous audio-video examination. These provisions would replace the existing 1-year and 6-month prescription expirations. A new VCPR must be established after VCPR expiration. This proposal also moves language from CCR Title 16, Section 2032.15 to BPC Section 4826.6, new subdivision L, for ease of reference. This regulation outlines conditions under which a VCPR can continue in the absence of the original veterinarian, provided a designated veterinarian assumes responsibility and maintains the established plan. It also moves language from CCR Title 16, Section 2032.25 to BPC Section 4826.6, new subdivision M, for ease of reference. This regulation outlines conditions under which a drug refill may be prescribed, dispensed, or furnished in the absence of the original veterinarian. The subcommittee and co-sponsors believe that there are many benefits to this proposal. This proposal aligns with current standards of care by adopting a patient-specific VCPR. It also modernizes veterinary practice by embracing the benefits of teleconsultation, telemedicine, and teletriage, while maintaining essential safeguards for animal welfare and public trust. It will provide enhanced access to care since AB 1399 unintentionally limited the ability for veterinarians to provide care through electronic means by requiring a VCPR for all veterinary services and limiting the provision of electronic veterinary services to only veterinarians. This proposal restores veterinary professionals' ability to deliver services electronically, enhancing access to care. It provides clearer definitions and regulations. The updated definitions and requirements for establishing and maintaining a VCPR, especially in the context of telemedicine, provide much-needed clarity for both veterinarians and clients. This reduces ambiguity and promotes consistent application of standards. It will provide improved animal welfare by clearly defining teletriage and clarifying how it can be used in emergencies. This proposal can lead to faster access to veterinary care and potentially life-saving interventions. The new 1-year expiration period for VCPRs established with an in-person examination and a 6-month expiration period for VCPRs established via electronic examination ensure that veterinarians maintain appropriate oversight and regularly reevaluate patient needs. This proposal also supports veterinarian to veterinarian collaboration. The clarified provisions for teleconsultation codify the existing practice of collaborating among veterinarians, allowing specialists or veterinarians in other states to offer expertise to California licensed veterinarians, ultimately benefiting the animal patient. So, any questions, comments?
So we need to go through this. Question, do you want to go through it in more detail or kind of by sections? I would suggest sections.
I thought that's what we were doing for B. Did you want to go through A in sections as well?
Did a summary of everything.
Okay.
May I first say that I'm impressed with the alliance of sponsors we have on this legislation. It's unheard of and very good.
Yeah, isn't this the first time? And I am very impressed. So thank you to our executive officer for really working with this and all of the alliance members to making this happen, because I think that this is important. And I really appreciate the committee working, the subcommittee working on this. And I'm very impressed with the outcome.
So how do you want to approach this? Any questions, first of all?
I mean, I'm happy to break it down further if you want to, instead of the summaries of each section. There's a lot of just renumbering in there and moving stuff around, which I skipped
Right.
over.
Yeah.
But the others I kind of hit piece by piece. But I can do further if you'd like.
I don't need it broken down if anybody else does, I don't.
I just had a question on the rabies, and it's probably in another section. It says that a VCPR is not needed to give a rabies vaccination. And a rabies vaccination can be given by a non-RVT and a non-DVM, or does it have to be an RVT still, or a DVM? Can it be given-
That was from previously board-approved language.
Right.
Exempting that. I believe it was for the purpose of rabies clinics, if I'm not mistaken.
But you do not need a VCPR to give a rabies vaccine, and you don't need to be licensed to give a rabies vaccine. Is that correct?
I would say that, there's still the practice of veterinary medicine. This doesn't exclude rabies vaccinations from the practice of veterinary medicine. It just says that you don't have to create a VCPR to administer a rabies vaccine. So to the extent the animal patient needs to be medically sound to receive a rabies vaccination, I think that there has to be a supervising veterinarian, because a rabies vaccine, I believe, is by prescription only. So a veterinarian, a licensed veterinarian is involved, prescribes the rabies vaccination, and then it's administered. So it's, this just means that they don't have to go through the whole examination and client agreement, that the client is authorizing the veterinarian to provide treatment, diagnose, prescribe.
But at some point, the veterinarian is responsible for determining if this was indicated and safe to give to the patient, which is kind of a nebulous VCPR.
This concept came out of conversations that Dr. Sullivan had with other public
Oh, well, that explains a
health
lot.
agencies. And so, we wanted to really make sure that there weren't any hurdles to getting the rabies vaccinations out there. So that's why this was originally incorporated into the VCPR exemption. So in the same way that there's a VCPR exemption for wild animals or animals who the owner is not known, we're trying to make sure that that animals are getting immediate care as needed. And I see Dr. Sullivan has his hand up.
Yes, Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, what we were trying to do, and we did talk to the public health veterinarian with the state of California, and they were fine with this. What we're doing is legalizing the longstanding requirement of having public rabies vaccinations in every community of the state. So this, we were not doing a complete physical exam. We were not having a complete medical record form for this, but there is a license. There is a veterinarian that is signing the rabies certificate license, and there is responsibility there. So we feel that we needed to update our records to allow us to continue to do those public vaccine clinics. And so that's why that was the impetus of putting this in the language. And we did this a number of years ago, but we're finally getting to actually getting it done now. Thank you.
So the name that's going to be on the rabies certificate is that of the veterinarian.
Okay.
Does the veterinarian have to be physically present when that rabies vaccine is given?
Well, there's
We need to talk about it.
If you're going to take liability for it by having your name on the certificate.
so on our vaccine regulations, there is a veterinarian that is on site that is supervising the vaccination clinics, and that is the responsible licensee that is saying that the animal can have a vaccine. So there is board supervision over this. There's regulations for vaccine clinics, and now we're allowing that rabies vaccination to be given without a physical exam.
Right.
Complete.
Any other questions about that? Yes.
My understanding is this didn't change anything about the rabies vaccination in that what was previously in law. Am I wrong? It just added, or a rabies vaccinate, I feel very loud. Or a rabies vaccination is prophylactically administered to the animal patient to prevent disease or loss of life. So I think we're talking about stuff that the law didn't change. We didn't change anything from previous.
Well, the board previously approved the language, but that was not ever put into any
Correct.
bill. So it is new language.
Right.
But to Dr. Sullivan's point about the supervision, the new laws that took effect, they actually it doesn't have to be a supervising veterinarian at the premises, right? They have to be available by phone or in the general vicinity. So they
Okay.
don't have to be there to supervise, right? Yes.
I mean, and I'm only bringing it up because it's a common question from the licensees on who can give a rabies vaccine and who cannot. It's probably one of the most common questions I receive. Some people think that only a veterinarian can give a rabies vaccine, and some people say that only a veterinarian or an RVT can give a vaccine. It's a common misconception.
All right, so I would say that there are regulations that require a licensed veterinarian to sign the certificate of rabies vaccinations. That's number one. A licensed veterinarian has to be involved in the administration somehow. With respect to whether the licensed veterinarian is in the vicinity or by phone, I believe that is actually the RVTV CPR exemption. So we're not talking about that per se, because this statute is requiring a VCPR to administer treatment. So the RVTV CPR, that's creating a VCPR. We're saying that rabies vaccination for this purpose, prophylactically administered to the animal patient to prevent disease or loss of life, that is exempt, that would be exempt from the VCPR requirement. With respect to supervision, that's going to be under typical RVT and VA supervision requirements for administering vaccinations. So I believe that's just under the RVT and VA duties and supervision regulations.
So this section under small animal vaccine clinics where it says a veterinarian must remain on site throughout the duration of the vaccine clinic and must maintain responsibility for all medical decisions has been superseded.
So the small animal vaccination clinics is now, let's see, we were just talking about the minimum standards have changed.
Okay. Okay.
I'm trying to find that language real quick. A veterinarian must remain on site throughout the duration of the scheduled vaccination event. So that is, I'm reading from the recently amended CCR Title 16, Section 2030.3 Minimum Standards, Animal Vaccination Veterinary Premises. So if we're talking about the old small animal vaccination clinic, which has been renamed the Animal Vaccination Veterinary Premises, a veterinarian must remain on site throughout the duration of the scheduled vaccination event. So a vet is on site for the rabies vaccinations if we're talking about the vaccination veterinary premises. And to clarify, these minimum standards are pertinent to various types of veterinary premises. So on one level, we're mixing up supervision requirements at different veterinary premises types. So for the question asked for the small animal vaccination clinics, that's going to be renamed, but it will still require a licensed veterinarian on site.
And the legislative proposal that we're considering is not applying to a specific premise. It's specific to the VCPR.
That's correct.
That's why there may be some differences in definition of who can administer the rabies vaccine. I think I get it.
Any
Okay.
further questions about that? Yes, Dr. Salcedo.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a little confused with the whole, what was that, the 669 or 662? The RVTs being able to do vaccinations as long as a veterinarian is available on the phone. Yes.
I think it was Senate Bill 669, and that was all about authorizing an RVT to act as the licensed veterinarian's agent for purposes of establishing the VCPR. So the veterinarian is not there. The RVT is going to examine the animal patient and determine whether or not the animal is sound enough to receive the vaccinations or other prophylactic treatment.
So this requirement of having a veterinarian on the premises does not conflict with that 669?
That's a different question.
But in the, like, I guess, the practice, if that's the situation, I guess the question is, do we need to have a veterinarian on site or not? Because that's the most common question, I guess. Is that VCPR able to be transferred or not?
Yes. Dr. Sullivan.
I think we're talking about two different scenarios, and consumer protection is the question that we have to overlook. I mean, we have to look at. And in both cases, there is a veterinarian that is responsible for whether it's a public clinic where they are where we're trying to satisfy the requirement by the state to have public rabies vaccine clinics, and then and there's this there I would assume the veterinarian needs to be on the premises. And the second scenario where the technician is acting on behalf of the veterinarian to establish a VCPR, there's also a license that is covering that for consumer protection. So I think we're looking at two different scenarios, and in both cases, there is a veterinarian responsible for that scenario. So I think we're fine.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is in the shelter situation, most of the time, it would be because of the lack of veterinarians, then technically the routine and regular vaccinations are being delegated to RVTs, which I think was what was behind the whole 669, advocacy, or, right? So that's why I think I'm a little confused. So in those two different scenarios, when and in which, I guess, institutions, agencies would it apply? Because it could go both ways. Does that make sense? Because I feel like if we're giving the RVTs the authority to act as an agent of the veterinarian on a regular basis, it's not just like pop-up vaccine clinics. It's actually in shelter situations is most of the time, what's happening. So is that different from what we're trying to establish here with the requirement?
Dr.
Okay.
Sullivan, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, there are two different scenarios. The one that we're addressing here has to do with the public vaccination clinics. And there's a veterinary, if you're doing a vaccine clinic under that regs, then the veterinarian has to be present. And, but the, a true VCPR does not have to be established. In the scenario of the shelter, different setting, different issues. In that case, the technician is acting on behalf of the veterinarian that they're working under to establish that VCPR. So I think we're trying to cover both scenarios because they are different. They have different needs, but we need to have some type of veterinary oversight on both. And I think we're satisfying that.
Dr. Gedkin.
Just to clarify, in the shelter rescue situation, there's no C in the VCPR. There is, so I'm reading this as the words before it, when the animal patient is a wild animal or the owner of the patient is unknown. In my head, it's like, and a rabies vaccine is administered.
I have to disagree because a lot of shelters do public services, which they, provide services for the public. So there is a client involved.
So is just, like I said, I'm reading the words right before it, wild animal, the owner of the patient is unknown or a rabies vaccination is administered instead of
Yeah.
unknown and?
No, so that's current law. When the VCPR, there is an exemption to the VCPR when the owner is unknown or when you have the wild animal. But I think we're getting a couple things. We're getting a little off topic because this is, again, already board approved language that we're putting back into here. So I think that we can relay that there was some confusion regarding this language and then maybe go to the rest of the proposal. Because we're also talking about supervision requirements, and this does nothing to change the existing supervision requirements. This is exempting if they're doing the rabies vaccines from the VCPR.
Any comment? Shall we move forward?
I'm just,
Okay.
I guess comment wise, I just want to say, it just causes for me a little bit of confusion, which applies to what? Do we, because as Dr. Nunez had mentioned, common question is, do we need to have a vet there or not? And this is, if we're going to go with, well, if the situation is this, then you do. And if the situation is this, you don't. I just find it a little confusing. I don't know if there's a way to kind of put some language as to clarify really when, the VCPR needs to be established and needing a veterinarian to be on the premises.
Yes, Tara.
Okay, so the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act has multiple pieces to it that speak to what's covered, what is the practice of veterinary medicine, and as you know, there is an owner exemption. Well, part of that statute also provides exemptions from veterinary practice treatment rendered by RVTs and DAs, which includes, I believe, vaccinations. So there's exemptions from the Practice Act. 669 made effective BPC section 4826.7, and that applies to animal control agency shelters, private animal shelters, humane societies, et cetera. This is the RVT VCPR. That's a separate section for rendering treatment, prophylactic care, vaccinations. Separately, we have animal vaccination events, which largely apply to privately owned vaccination events. So, these things it's complicated. It's in different areas of the statutes. If you want to talk about what type of supervision is required at each location, I think that's a different conversation. Because right now we're solely focused on changing the VCPR requirements and how that also impacts telemedicine. But I would say that there has been a lot of work in the past several years
to expand the ability of shelters to provide vaccinations to animals they receive who they don't know the owner of, but also who they do know the owner of. So there's, those two types of treatment as well on different owned animals. Anyway, so I would say that there has been a lot of change in the law that is providing the ability for shelters to vaccinate, to administer other prophylactic types of treatment. And we don't need to resolve all of that in the VCPR statute right now.
And I think based on just the discussion today and your feedback that there's a lot of confusion in the industry, then we could work with the outreach subcommittee to maybe develop update the FAQs that are currently in existence and develop some outreach materials to help educate on those questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
I think sometimes we take a snapshot of something and we forget that this is just a little piece. And there's so many other big pieces around it. And so we're forgetting about all of the other pieces around it. And so it gets really confusing for us. And we're just trying to take a little snapshot of this. And so that's why it gets confusing, because we're taking pieces of the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act. And so, and we forget that there is a lot of work that's gone into this. So it's been vetted a lot. But I'm going to do this because we'll see what happens, but I'm going to still go out there and I'm going to put myself out there. And I am going to entertain a motion to recommend to the board submission to the California State Legislature, the attached legislative proposal to amend BPC sections 4825.1, 4826.6, 4830, and 4840.5.
That was sneaky how you did that.
Yeah, very. Very. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I was going to say one more comment, but now I guess I'm going to
Yeah,
hold it back.
now discussion. Now we have the discussion. So I actually have a question on page 11. And this kind of came out of the animal balance discussion about VCPR and having multiple veterinarians there, and which one do all the veterinarians there need to have a VCPR with the client and all that. But then I began thinking about the situation of the specialty hospital where a client brings, let's say it's a dog, client brings a dog in and sees the internal medicine specialist, and then that specialist may send it to the radiologist for an ultrasound, and then they decide it needs a surgeon, and that means an anesthesiologist. And then after the surgery, it may go to a critical care specialist. I guess, our original statutes and regulations were written for one veterinarian in one hospital with one client and one patient. And now we are in the situation where we have one client and one patient has 5 veterinarians in one hospitalization. And so in talking this over with Jessica, we thought that maybe L on the top of page 11, L, where a veterinarian client-patient relationship may continue to exist in the absence of the veterinarian when all of the following are met. But my point was, well, the original veterinarian, the one that created the VCPR, is not really absent. It may still be in the same building. But does you think this still fits?
Interestingly enough, I made a note on my thing that all of this may be a lot.
Yes, yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify, again, this is pulling mostly from existing regulation, which is 2032.15. And it does say it's in absence of client communication. And it was changed to an absence of the veterinarian, but there hasn't been any confusion of that veterinarian is still, it might not be in that discussion, the originating veterinarian, but so you're an example of they're not absent because they're in the building, I think this still would apply to that.
Okay.
They're not absent with the client and the patient in the room.
Yes, Tara.
I think we do need for the meeting minutes clarification, that subdivision L, paragraph 1, it says a VCPR was established with an original veterinarian and a subsequent veterinarian serves in the absence of the original veterinarian at the same location where the medical records are kept. Absence could mean, in the building, but unavailable. And that's why they're absent, and a subsequent treating veterinarian is handling the rest of this. It doesn't have to mean that the original veterinarian is not in the building. So when you see this language, a subsequent veterinarian serves in the absence of the original veterinarian at the same location. At the same location doesn't mean the original veterinarian. That means the subsequent veterinarian is serving at the same location as the original veterinarian. So I think I just want to make that clear. It's not that the original veterinarian isn't in the building. It's that both the original veterinarian and subsequent veterinarian are practicing at the same location. Like that's where they are serving the animal patient.
Dr. Waterhouse, I'm not sure if I understand your concern about this paragraph.
My concern was the word absence. I guess I needed to talk more about the definition of absence,
Are you
Tara just gave.
satisfied with Tara's definition?
which she just gave me. Oh.
Okay. So we're good.
Okay. So we have a motion. Any more discussion? I think we're okay. Should we open up to public comment?
Yes.
Seeing none, moderator, can you open up to WebEx for comment?
WebEx, now is the time for comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes.
Dr. Getkin,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez,
Yes.
Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
Ms. Shefelt,
Yes.
Dr. Solocito,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Ms. Esri,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And so we move on to agenda item 5B, another legislative proposal. And I think Dr. Sullivan's going to speak to this.
Thank you. At the October 2025 board meeting, the board directed the MDC to draft a legislative proposal creating a limited shelter license to help augment the shelter workforce while maintaining adequate consumer protection. In response, the subcommittee drafted a legislative proposal that creates actually three categories. The first is a retired status for veterinarians and RVTs. The second is a retired shelter volunteer status for veterinarians and RVTs. And the third is a shelter veterinary license. The retired status for veterinarians and RVTs allows their public record to list them as retired rather than showing their license as being expired, delinquent, or canceled, which has a negative connotation. The proposed retired status, the status legislation also defines the application fee, the conditions for denial, how to use the professional title, board oversight, the exemptions for renewal, and notice that they cannot practice except as a volunteer in a shelter. The second category is a retired shelter volunteer. Status allows retired veterinarians and RVTs to practice within their scope of practice so long as they do so for free and solely for animal control shelters or humane societies. And the third category is the shelter veterinarian license status. It creates a streamlined process to allow out-of-state licensed veterinarians and licensed Canadian veterinarians to work in a shelter practice. Now, Madam Chair, I would ask if you would like me to go line by line, or if you want to approach this by just asking if there's any comments or questions in each section or part of a section.
Let's go by sections. Agreed? Yes.
Okay. First, the legislative proposal will repeal Business and Professions Code section 4843.5 and 4844 as they are covered under Business and Profession Code sections 4901 and 4902. The legislation will create the retired license status by adding Business and Professions Code 4846.3, which is on page 7 of your packet. Many other professions have the classification of retired, and we are updating our code to provide that status so that retirees do not have the status of expired, delinquent, or canceled. It also allows us to create the category of retired volunteer, which we will cover shortly. Any questions or comments on this section, Madam Chair?
Any questions? None so far.
Okay. Then the item 3 that I have is that we are also proposing to add a Business and Professions Code section 4846.4. That's on your page 8 of your packet. And that's the retired shelter veterinarian volunteer and the retired shelter RVT volunteer categories. Any questions on this section?
Any questions? Yes.
Do we have Humane Society defined? Or is it defined?
It is in the language. I'm just using it as a general term.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know. Like, I tried to look to see, I mean, it's like it's not in our practice act, correct? It's just.
Yeah, so in our Practice Act under the exemptions language, there's exemptions there for animal control shelters as agencies and humane societies. There's not a definition of what those are, but there hasn't been any confusion for what those are. There's been some discussion, and it's noted in your in the memo about the shelter community asking for it to be opened up to include nonprofits and rescue groups. So, but right now, this would be limited to animal control shelters and humane societies.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, Dr. Sullivan, you want to proceed?
So you want to do everything and then ask for public comment, or do you want to do that as we go along?
I think do everything and then ask for public comment.
Okay. So my 4th item we have is that we are proposing to add Business and Profession Code section 4848.2, which is the shelter veterinary license, and that is on page 9. I do have to comment that, you know, it's pretty straightforward language. That's why I don't think going line by line is necessary. So anyway, that's Section 4848.2 is up for discussion.
Any questions? Comments? Dr. Sullivan, it looks like we have no questions or comments.
All right. The fifth item is Business Professions Code, Section 4858, 4858.1, and 4858.2. At the bottom of page 10, goes over to page 11. And this is basically just cleanup language for these sections. In addition to that, we have Business and Professions Code, Section 4900, subsection B2 on page 11. This is added language to require the renewal of premises registrations to confirm that the information in subsections C, D, and E of section 4853 is current and valid. This requirement is to correct an oversight of not including this information on the renewal application when this statute was originally written. Turn it back to you, Cheryl.
Yeah. Dr. Nunez.
Back on page 10, the examination, it said it's going to be administered by the board. Is the examination developed by the board?
I think that should be, I'm sorry, where are you at?
It's under the shelter.
You're looking at item 6, right? Past, so that's the VLE, the veterinary law examination, and that is by us.
So it's developed and administered by us,
Yes.
not any other organization.
Any other questions? We have a static problem, sorry.
I thought it was me.
It's trying to be fixed. There. Okay,
Okay, you're set with that?
okay. Any questions, comments right now? Okay, back to you, Dr. Sullivan.
Okay, my sixth item is Business and Professions Code, Section 4901. That's on page 11 and 12, is amended to show how a license, registration, or permit may be renewed or restored to active status within 5 years after its expiration. Business and Professions Code 4902, subsection A on page 12 is cleanup language to clarify what happens if a license, registration, or permit is not renewed within 5 years. Subsection B states the conditions of how a license or registrant can be restored to active status if it has a retired status, for more than 5 years. And finally, Business and Professions Code 4905, subsection B and subsections 21 through 27. And these are on pages 12 to 13. They set the fees for, and I'll quickly go through them. Subsection 21 is the application of the retired status. Subsection 22 is the application of the retired volunteer status. 23 is the biennial renewal fee for the retired volunteer status. 24 is the fee to restore a license or registration from retired status to retired volunteer status and to active status. 25 is the fee for shelter veterinarian status application. 26 is the initial shelter veterinary license fee. And 27 is the biennial shelter veterinarian license fee. by putting all of these classifications for the fees of licenses and registrations into statute, including the fees, we will be effective. It will be effective as soon as the law is signed, as opposed to waiting several years and having it done through regulations. So open for questions and comments.
Any questions, comments?
Do we have any idea if this is going to help the shelter community?
That question is above our pay grade of the subcommittee.
We hope. This is some of the feedback that we got from both the shelter community and from Animal Balance and from social compassion and legislation. The shelter community had asked about allowing retired veterinarians to be able to practice in shelters. And so this is what that's creating. And then some of the feedback that the boards received from other stakeholders, including Animal Balance and social compassion, is that one of the things that takes a long time in their minds to get an out-of-state licensee into shelters is because proving the education and the NAVLE scores. And so they said because those are the two biggest hurdles, they were looking at eliminating those if there's other consumer protection mechanisms in place. And so that's what this proposal does. So we're hopeful, because that's what the feedback is that we're getting from the shelters, is that this would help.
But no concern that it would harm the consumer or shelters?
Concerns that it would harm the consumer? Go ahead.
Harm the public.
I don't know.
We're looking at this from consumer protection, and these veterinarians have licenses. The majority are going to will have practice within 5 years. I mean, it's still the same standard as any licensee. So I don't think there's, and again, we can track this, and if we are having complaints or issues, we can come back and readdress it, but I don't see any immediate consumer harm. I also wanted to add, in my role nationally, this is an issue all over the country. And I think these changes will facilitate veterinarians moving from one area to another and minimize the barriers across the country. I think this could be a good example of how we can do it and how other states can do it.
And all the consumer protection mechanisms are still in there because they're still being fingerprinted. We still have to verify where they're licensed. They still have to do CE, and they still are renewing. So those are still in place, and we maintain jurisdiction over the license. So if something were to go wrong, we would still be able to take action.
Okay, I might have missed the CE requirements.
And I have to say, you know, the shelters need the help. Right now, there are offers coming from out of state. By providing this license, we could entertain having what we call seasonal workers coming in and out of the state to help out our shelters whenever they create like big events to make like mass like spay and neuter events, which is a big help to the community. And I think the biggest consumer risk is not providing them these services. And this is what this shelter license will address.
And Dr. Nunez, you said you missed the renewal requirements in 4846.4. Go down to E, so that's on page 9. That's the renewal requirements. They have to not only meet the renewal requirements, but they're also certifying that their sole purpose of the retired volunteer status is to provide voluntary unpaid veterinary medical services. And in 4900, that talks about the renewal requirements. So they still have to meet that. And then you also have in 4848.2, under C, talks about the renewal requirements there as well.
Thank you.
Tara.
Jessica, could you give us a quick summary of how the fee ranges were, how you came about coming up with the fee ranges on pages 12 and 13 to amend BPC section 4905?
Sure. So 4905, when I looked at the fees for the retired status, I looked at what other state boards have within DCA. So it mirrors that. And when we looked at the retired volunteer similarly, you have a difference there with the retired status. The thought is that they're not actively practicing, but there's still going to be some work that's being done on the front end and on our side to do. And so it's nominal. 20 in number 22, that's retired volunteer status. Again, it's a lower fee because we're acknowledging that they're not getting paid for the services, but there's still going to be some maintenance on the back end and at the board. So there has to be some kind of fee there. So that's where those two came in. When it comes to the other fees for the retired, for the shelter veterinarian, we mirrored the fees that are in regulations for the university licenses. In this current statute, it doesn't set a minimum, but we looked at what the university licenses are paying, and we mirrored that for the minimum, and then the ceilings, the not exceed, comes from existing law for the university licenses, which I think are now parallel to the veterinarian license. And the thought is that they're getting paid for those services, so they should be able to pay for the full fee.
There's no years.
Any other comments? Any other comments, Dr. Sullivan?
I do not.
Is there a motion? Chrissy's getting ready.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion to recommend to the board submission to the California State Legislature the attached legislative proposal to add BPC section 4846.3, 4846.4, and 4848.2, amend BPC section 4827, 4858, 4858.1, 4858.2. Now I know why nobody else wanted to read this. 4900, 4901, 4902, and 4905, and repeal BPC sections 4843.5 and 4844.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have any public comment from the room? And he can't comment. You can say. No public comment from the room. Moderator, could you open up WebEx for public comment?
WebEx is now taking public comment on the motion. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, please. Okay, shall we vote?
Dr. Getkin,
Yes.
Dr. Nunez, Ms. Pulowski,
Yes.
Ms. Shefelt,
Yes.
Dr. Solcito,
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan,
Yes.
Ms. Sestry,
Yes.
Dr. Waterhouse,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, let's take a break. It's 11:05. Should we come back at 11:20? And there is an agenda item 5C, and I think Ms. Asuri is going to speak on that.
Yeah, so an update on the CDFA, the quarterly meeting. On January 9th, the subcommittee met with CDFA to discuss any updates since our last quarterly meeting. It was a very brief meeting. They announced that they have a new director, Dr. Stephen Beam, and a new acting state veterinarian, Dr. Amanda Murray. Dr. Brady gave an update on blood banks. Their penalty regs were posted for 15-day notice on Thursday. Corporate hospitals have been ramping up their internal production, and CDFA is still fielding many questions about the incentives blood banks can offer. They're having trouble contacting veterinarians for veterinary feed directive errors and violations. They discussed the various ways they try to contact the veterinarians listed on the VFDs. Ms. Sieferman noted that VFD violations can now be prosecuted by the board should CDFA decide to forward them to the board. And that was the extent of the meeting.
Thank you. On to agenda item, oh, sorry, I have to do public comment on that too. Is there any public comment in the room? Seeing none, moderator, if you could open up to WebEx for public comment.
WebEx is open for public comment on 5C as in Charlie. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment longer to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, please. Dr. Sullivan.
Yes, before we move off of this section, I would just like to give a special thanks to Jessica and Tara and Elizabeth for having the stakeholder meetings and getting, CDMA, San Francisco SPCA, San Diego Humane, and Social Compassion and Legislation all together on these bills and be able to work together with them. I think it's a new era in the Veterinary Medical Board, and I think the three of you deserve a lot of credit for this. So I think that's what's made these pretty dramatic new classifications of licenses go through so easily because of all of that work. So thank you very much on behalf of the committee.
And I'll second that.
I'll third. Yes, thank you.
Okay, on to agenda item number 6. Dr. Gedkin, the Enforcement Committee.
Thank you. And for this first part, I'll just have you scroll to the very last page so we can review the statistics from last year. So if we can just scroll to the table at the end. There we go. The board currently has 5 consultants and for 53 experts, and we have 34 GPs and 19 specialists. Since the last quarterly board meeting, the board was able to add to the pool 3 new experts, 2 of which are general practitioners and 1 of which is a specialist. And as indicated in attachment 1, from January through November 2025, so a recap of the year, consultants reviewed 709 cases, of which 384 were determined to be no violation. 20 were found to be educational opportunities, 22 had insufficient evidence, and 283, which were 40% of cases, were determined to need a full expert review. Notably, the consultants resolved 60% of the standard of care cases without the need for a full expert review or report. In that same time frame, experts reviewed 340 cases with 126 closed as no violation. 132 were closed with an educational letter. 31 were closed due to insufficient evidence or other. 14 resulted in citations for 7 respondents, and 38 referred for disciplinary action for 15 respondents. Based on this data, 85% of the cases closed involving an expert review did not result in a citation or discipline. Similar to what was reported at the last MDC meeting in October,
Dr. Gedkin? Sorry to interrupt you. The table was updated to be more in line with our enforcement report so that these actually start July through December for the fiscal year. So some of those numbers in the
Correct.
narrative have been updated.
Got it.
So, I mean, the percentages are pretty close to being the same, but in case you're trying to compare apples to apples, it'll be,
Thank you for clarifying, because I was not looking there. I was reading.
okay.
Appreciate that.
He's making it-
I just wanted to highlight that the consultants were able to resolve 65% of the standard of care cases without the need for a full expert review. So that's a huge
Yeah.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
And while we are getting through our backlog, we might not feel it in for a while, but it will start making huge impacts, both for time and for the cost of enforcement. And then that number, as far as cases that were resolved involving expert review that did not result in citation discipline has rose to 92%. So that's the biggest change from what you just said.
Thank you for clarifying that. I thought I was in cognitive decline, trying to.
I'm just sitting here reading, so I do thank you for that.
I was seeing the faces.
So now that the table is there, you can just absorb that. And I will just move on to the roundtables from there. Roundtables were held on November 18th for consultants and November 20th for experts. The consultant roundtable had 5 attendees and the expert roundtable had 20, not including the 5 consultants. During these roundtables, a variety of topics were discussed, including not posting anything case related to social media, reminders about expert requirements and clinical practice experience, examples and information on passive versus active voice in reports, information on additional resource materials for experts to obtain from the board, fees charged for reviewing records, attributing standard of care departures accurately when work is performed by supporting staff such as RBTs, veterinary assistant permit holders, and veterinary assistants, invoice reminders, and relief veterinarian responsibility for work performed by support staff. Post-discipline expert reviews, the subcommittee, Dr. Waterhouse and I reviewed 6 finalized cases to identify praise and opportunities for improvement to relay to the expert who opined on the related case. Beyond the feedback regarding standard of care findings, the subcommittee also identified a few report writing opportunities, such as listing departures separately in the conclusion section, splitting findings into 2 departures when appropriate, using bullet points for record keeping violations, confirming with the analyst that there was no subsequent veterinarian, avoiding blanket statements and use of some biased and/or leading phrases. Avoiding duplicating sections such as analysis and case opinion, and not assuming everything the complainant states is a fact. Upon receiving the feedback, one expert said that the feedback was incredibly helpful. Thank you. I'm always looking for ways to improve my SME reviews. I am really thankful that you guys took the time to give this feedback. Quarterly case reviews will continue, provided there are finalized cases from active experts for the subcommittee to review.
When you say not posting anything related to anything case related to social media, that the board not post anything case related, or that licensees not?
The
anything on social-
the SME reviewing the case, I believe, was clarification. I don't think there was a specific example if I'm trying to. Not a
Experts
specific.
shouldn't be posting anything to their social media page or anything like that that has to do with their their review of
It
it.
was a statement by enforcement.
Was that an issue?
I believe it came up. I don't know if it was directly an issue. I don't have the specific hypothetical or example, but
Yeah.
it came up maybe organically to where we had to make sure that people weren't posting anything that needs to stay
Correct.
with the board.
All right. And discussion on charging of, sorry, go ahead.
Chris, do you have a question?
Yeah, because I know, oh my God, I feel so loud.
Yeah.
I don't want to go in because I know we're going to talk about the discussion next. And so on the roundtable, invoice reminders, I'm assuming this is going forward since it just, are we clarifying retroactively? Or are we talking about this? Is this going, so what was that about? Like, how was that presented?
It's basically just to ensure that people are timely submitting their invoices for their case reviews. So I think that it's more so cleanup items that'll be brought up because some of our experts are not, timely submitted. It has to do with the
To the
payment.
invoices to the board.
Yeah, invoices to the board from the expert so we can pay them.
Yes.
Okay, you may proceed.
I have another question though. What this relief veterinarian responsibility for work performed by support staff? What do you mean by that? On the roundtable discussion?
Trying to remember how that came up.
This next discussion dominated so much.
Yeah. We have something more important to talk about.
Okay.
I won't lie, I highlighted that and then I read next and I was like, oh, okay, now I know I don't need to ask that question because we're going to have a huge discussion.
Yeah.
That was regarding when a relief veterinarian goes to a premises and then they don't know the RVTs and the VACSPs that work there, and if they're the ones who are responsible for their competency.
And what was the outcome?
I think the outcome was that they would be responsible for it since they're the veterinarian on site, and that's the way the law reads. So it was kind of discussion was what kind of information would the relief vet maybe want to get from the practice before they agree to be a relief vet.
Mhm.
Okay. That can make sense. Much more important things.
This subcommittee met on December 9th to discuss the MDC memo contents as noted above. During the expert roundtable, there was a discussion concerning charging a records review fee for verifying or researching a patient's medical record to provide written prescriptions. It was clarified that if after a veterinarian examination, it is determined a written prescription for medication is required, the prescription is to be provided to the consumer free of charge. However, the discussion centered around the fact that many veterinarians must do additional work when a client requests to extend or refill a written prescription, which sometimes involves a new veterinarian or other staff members if the original veterinarian isn't available. The question raised was, can a client be charged a fee for the review of an animal patient's record when a written prescription is requested outside of an examination appointment? Generally, the board does not have jurisdiction over fees. BPC Section 4170, subdivision A6 and 7 provides that a drug cannot be dispensed to a patient in the prescriber's office or place of practice unless the prescriber, before dispensing, offers to give a written prescription to the patient, and that the patient may elect to have filled by the prescriber or by any pharmacy. And the prescriber provides the patient with written disclosure that the patient has a choice between obtaining the prescription from the dispensing prescriber or obtaining the prescription at a pharmacy of the patient's choice. BPC Section 4170, subdivision C, provides the board with authority to ensure compliance with those provisions by the board's licensees. CCR Title 16, Section 2032.2 implements BPC Section 4170 and establishes requirements for written prescriptions. CCR Title 16, Section 2032.2, subsection C, requires veterinarians to notify clients that they have a choice to obtain either the medication or written prescription, and that the client shall not be charged for the written prescription. CCR Title 16, Section 2032.25 establishes requirements for a veterinarian to authorize a prescription refill absent the original prescribing veterinarian. Title 16, Section 2032.25, subsection B2A requires the veterinarian authorizing the refill to enter the prescription refill in the animal patient's record. The initial statement of reasons in the rulemaking supporting the addition of subsection C to Title 16, 2032.2, operative on January 2014, states the proposed regulation provides that veterinarians must notify clients that they have a right to choose to receive written prescriptions at no cost. That statement supports the plain meaning of the regulation. Notably, there is no express time limit on this prohibition. Ergo, the client can request the written prescription at the time the treatment plan is communicated and the medication is prescribed, but before the medication is dispensed by the veterinarian, or the client can request the written prescription at a later date, subject to the prescription limitations in BPC Section 4826.6, subdivision I. The language does not specifically state the acts leading up to the written prescription, such as reviewing medical records, cannot be charged to the client. However, in the event a veterinarian charged the client for record review to issue the written prescription, this review fee would subvert the intent and arguably is contrary to the plain meaning of the regulation that the client receives the written prescription at no cost. So the action requested is that we discuss the scenarios and determine whether this is an issue that should be clarified in existing regulation.
Any comments first? We're so quiet today. So, as I understand it, we either decide that there is an issue here and it should go to we would take it to the board to see if they agree and for it to come back to us. Or we just decide that we take the intent of the law and decide we enforce our rules that way. How this came up was enforcement because people, the reviewers, the subject matter experts were asking us if we thought we should,
I believe
if that was a
yeah, so I believe this actually came
violation.
from an analyst. I think Brett was the one that asked us at the meeting.
Because we are getting invoices now to compare to medical records many times. So if it shows up on an invoice,
And that was the discussion
yes.
that we were having. And I think a big example of it was the specialty hospitals or the chart that is 9,000 pages long, right? Like those records, and they're requesting a written prescription or a refill of the written prescription in a timely manner. And let's say that veterinarian that knows off the top of their head or not isn't in for a week. So now someone does have to go through and kind of cross-reference, okay, what was the VCPR and stuff. And for some cases it takes staff and it takes time. So that was kind of the hypothetical, like, are you not to charge for that time if research actually does need to be, why is she requesting this prescription?
In that scenario, I think that is absolutely not the client's fault, right? That's a record keeping issue. There should be no reason that the client should have to pay because it's not easily accessible in the medical record.
Oh, it could be easily accessible. I mean, I know in my place, they spend, I bet there's doctors spend 2 hours a day because we get so many written prescription requests.
Right,
And I have good records of being on this.
right.
And so they can still spend, because it's not their case, and they can still spend a couple hours going through all the prescription requests. Yes, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, I think the intent of the law has to do with the prescription during the physical exam and or examination, even if it's virtual. And I think that also should include refills. I think that's the intent, or was the intent. Yeah, I just can't imagine that that it's that prohibitive. If the client needs to know ahead of time. So, if that's the policy, then I think there should be notice at the time of the physical exam or the initial prescription. But the intent, I think, is pretty clear.
I agree. I read it that way. But I know that veterinarians can spend a lot of time doing this, but I agree that's the intent of the law. That's my opinion. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, I would also say that I believe is the intent of the law, and it may be internal that people need to make sure when the veterinarian does the prescription, the refills are authorized, right there, how many refills they have, and that it's taken care of on the front end, because as a client, right?
But what if the refills aren't authorized and they're still asking for it? Because that's what happens.
You mean the prescription is expired?
May not be. Maybe they didn't anticipate they need a refill. Dr.
Yeah, I mean,
Nunez.
I still don't, yeah,
I
I
can-
guess I still don't think it's the client's fault. I would think,
Yeah,
Um,
I can see where, I mean, there's some medications that are prescribed for a medical condition that might have a short period of time, like an upper respiratory infection. 6 months later, you can't expect for a refill of that antibiotic if the patient hasn't been seen for another infection versus a more longer term prescription for, say, for example, a thyroid supplement. So there's different written prescriptions that may not be renewable just because they were originally indicated, is what I'm saying.
Yes, that's why it takes time to figure all this out.
Yeah, so my next question is, what are you asking this committee to do right now?
So,
Are you asking us if it's an issue that we want the board to consider more?
yes,
Then I say, yes, we should have to ask the board to consider it more because there's a lot of issues. It's complicated. I think it deserves more attention.
And to consider more to do what? To change the law to allow them to charge for the time it takes to
Well,
review
maybe,
records?
and it's gonna be, I think that maybe a prescription has a lifespan to it, as opposed to like, you can keep your VCPR for a year, but should you be allowed to have a prescription for a year? Or should some medications have a lifespan to it, like antibiotics, antimicrobials, controlled substances? Should they also be allowed to have a lifespan of a year? You can write a
Roll
written
drugs
prescription
don't.
after a year.
But is that what we're asking? Because we're asking about charging
I don't know
for
what we're
prescription
asking, but-
review. So I don't know that that's what we're asking
it's
either. We're
more than
asking
just-
about prescription review and if we are allowed to charge for it. So what's the intent of the law?
Right.
And so I don't know that that's what, we're not talking about. It doesn't matter if you review,
I hear you. I
yeah.
think it's too simplistic of a question of whether or not we should charge for it.
Here. So another thing is Dr. Waterhouse and I are talking because we're like, the subcommittee is not directed by the board to do this issue, right? So right off the bat, we're a little like, oh, should we? But at the same time, this question comes up with enforcement because we need that's why we discuss, right? And the thing is, sometimes these are a little open-ended where we don't have consensus. And we still need to give the SMEs and enforcement like an answer, right? And there's been some questions that's just dangling that it's like so our intent was to bring this discussion up because it wasn't a consensus and we're just wondering, because it does sound to me like we do have a pretty good consensus here that the intent of the law is clear. So honestly, my personal goal bringing this up was just to see if there is some closures that we can go back to the SMEs and back to enforcement and with an answer instead of, well, we don't know, we're going to move on, right? So this was just kind of dipping our toe in the water to see if, bringing up that issue specifically. And like I said, it does sound like the majority of people agree that the intent of the law is not to, and I'm seeing a lot of nods. Okay.
I think the intent is there, but I think what Dr. Nunez is saying, but he's not, that just because the intent is of the law says yes, but he's asking to go further than that. Yes, the intent's there, but he doesn't want to stop there. That's what he's saying. Am I incorrect in that, Dr. Nunez?
Oh, correct.
Dr. Solicido.
Yes, thank you. I think what needs to be established really is we have the challenge on the veterinarian's part whenever we have all these requests, and it takes a lot of time, for them to go over records. But then, as Dr. Nunez have said, if there is an expiration of the prescription written, and I remember like our prescription pad we would write down up to what date the prescription is valid for. Then that should be an explanation to the clients that once this date is done, you will need a new prescription, meaning you have to go through the entire process of coming back, reassess the patient and all that stuff. It's not just a phone call that you need to go back to my records 2 years ago, I was prescribed this, and my dog has been on this medication for 2 years now. I need more. It doesn't work that way. And I think there just needs to be clarification that the prescription does have an expiration date. It cannot be just like an unlimited for the lifetime of the pet.
No, they're not, nobody's saying that.
No, but
But we're saying up until 12 months.
correct. And that's where I think we need to, what you call this, like clarify, is that 12 months something written in the law? Or is that just something that we
Yes.
as practitioners have adopted? And I think that's where we need to have a little bit of clarity on how we're explaining this. And again, a lot of times it's about the communication and how we communicate with the clients right from the get-go when we provide the prescription.
Subcommittee, task force.
Oh, Dr. Sullivan.
I think that if the consensus of the committee is that there isn't a fee warranted, I think we could have an educational outreach to explain what that means. I mean, with the new law of the VCPR being 1 year, I think that's a reasonable time that if a business wants to charge for refilling prescriptions, they can kind of put that in their, average it out and put it in their office call charges and handle it that way. By averaging it out. I think if the committee feels that it is the intent, we can handle it with educational material.
Do we have a motion? Do we need a motion?
Yeah, you don't need, there doesn't need to be a motion.
Yeah. Is there a consensus? Dr. Nunez, are you going to suggest something?
I don't know if we have a consensus that, I mean, I get that the intention is to not charge the client for a prescription refill. That, I'm fine with that, but I'm questioning whether or not like specifically for an antibiotic, I don't think an antibiotic should be able to be refilled up to a year because it just may not be indicated. Or maybe some long-term medications like thyroid supplements or NSAIDs could have a year lifespan, but what if their body weight changes, or what if metabolic conditions pop up that may make those medications contraindicated?
But I think now we're trying to micromanage what veterinarians do, and we're trying to say, well, but this medication is this and this, and it's, I mean, we're going back to
You don't
telling,
want to-
well, with this, we're doing this, and with this, we're doing this.
I hear you. It's dangerous to try to like write down how to practice veterinary medicine.
Right, and if we start saying with this medication, you can do this, and with this medication, you can do this, then what happens when we leave something out? That's always the unintended consequence when we start saying, when you have this, this medication you can write for this long, and this medication, well, what happens when we leave that medication out? It's always the unintended consequence, and so we need to be very careful because we're trying to be too prescriptive.
I understand.
Let me just bring it directly here. When I'm reviewing a case and I open a case and there's an invoice and I see records review fee charged when a client wanted a refill of a written prescription, do I write that that's a violation of Title 16? And that's the ultimate question. It bears down to. And the thing is, we see it. We need an answer. But the thing also is, we do not, the board does not, I don't want to say jurisdiction. Usually, we're not talking about fees because it is outside the jurisdiction. So this is also like, that's, I think, the question, because this isn't a standard of care question necessarily. It involves an appropriateness of a fee when it's stated that a client would not be charged for a written prescription, even though this fee is mined as a record review.
So I just want to clarify, subject matter experts should not be opining on whether or not a law was violated. So they should be opining on the standard of care. And if this steps outside of the standard of care, they can call us and we could talk about it, and the staff can decide if we're going to pursue any disciplinary action for a law that's violated. So I just want to
Right.
clarify.
And to make it full circle, this is the question we got from one of the staff members. So that's why it's like the dog chasing its tail. So I just need a consensus of if a client is charged a records review fee in association with not the primary written prescription. Yeah.
Tara, yes.
So CCR section 2032.2C, which establishes this prohibition on charging a fee for the written prescription, that is tacked on to the requirement under BPC section 4170A6 that the prescriber before dispensing offers to give a written prescription to the patient that the patient may elect to have filled by the prescriber or by any pharmacy. And when I look at this, I'm thinking, okay, this is a moment in time. The person was just examined, and now before handing over medication, the patient needs to be told they have a choice to either take that dispensed medication or go to a pharmacy to have it filled. So I'm thinking about this 30,000 foot as this is a moment in time. If it's at the moment of I'm about to dispense, but before I do that, I'm going to tell you have the option to get a written prescription. Well, could that also mean before dispensing 6 months from now, I have to tell you, you can get a written prescription. Then the client is saying, I want a written prescription. Okay, well, I didn't just examine the animal patient. Now I've got to go back through all of the medical records. So I think it may be unclear what is before dispensing. What was the original intent of 4170? Is that at the moment of deciding that a medication is necessary for treatment? And okay, before I give you the medication, I'm going to tell you can have a written prescription. Now we're going over to animal patient records, because this is a pharmacy law requirement. And we've got veterinarians coming in like, okay, well, I haven't seen this animal patient. The client is requesting a written prescription. Now I need to take a look at all of these medical records to make sure that this prescription can be written, can be issued, because even though the client says they need it, I need to make sure it's, medically necessary. It was like, it's within a window of VCPR validity, all of that. If it is an antibiotic, does the animal patient have to come back for another exam? So 30,000 foot level, I think it's unclear whether or not a records review fee could be charged at a particular point. I think they have to be told you can have a written prescription. I'm not going to charge you to write this prescription. But when 6 months later, I have to go back and review all these records, I don't know that the regulation is sufficiently clear that records review is prohibited.
All of this just makes me wonder if they were requesting the refill in your own pharmacy, would you be charging a records review fee, right? I mean, I don't know. That's where my little brain's gone, at least. Like, this is talking about a written prescription, right? But very easily, the client could just call and say, can I have a refill on that cough suppressant or thyroid med or whatever it is? Someone would have to research it for that too, right? If the veterinarian was not there. And so how do you charge a client in one circumstance and not in the other? But as I think all these things, I also feel like I'm maybe missing the mark on why we've been asked, but.
I imagine they would be doing the same thing, whether they charge for it or not, or if they charge a different fee, if they fill it in-house, I'm sure would be the case, but yeah, but again, we don't get into fees. I think we're talking about the concept,
I mean, To what Christy had mentioned about being didactic, and I've used that word enough, but I should use that word more. But in my practice, when I write a prescription for any condition, and when it comes to that number of refills, I always put 0 for any medication that I prescribe. Because if they need more of it, I do like to review the record to make sure that it's still indicated, or if there's something new that's developed. There's other doctors that, even within my own practice, that practice differently. That believe that this is something that that's going to be on for a year. So as long as they've been seen within the year, unlimited refills. And so when the patient calls in for a refill, it doesn't even get reviewed by a doctor. Just if the receptionist sees that there's refills available, they fill it. We're all practicing according to the standard of practice. I personally believe that my standard of practice is higher when I review my cases, but it doesn't have to be. You're right. I concede to your point that we don't have to be didactic in how we tell veterinarians to practice medicine. But do we have an option to educate that maybe there could be some indications where you might not want to have unlimited refills for certain types of medications like antibiotics, or chemotherapeutic drugs or insulin, which could very quickly change at the drop of a hat. Maybe not do anything legislatively or regulatory wise, but educational wise, do we have that option? Because it's all about consumer protection, and I think it's a consumer protection issue.
I think the question right now is, do we handle this at our level, or do we want to go into it further, have it go to the board, have them decide if they want to have us discuss it further? Dr. Solicito.
I kind of need some clarity from the SMEs or where this issue came from. How exactly is a charge for prescription or review affecting the standard of care of a veterinarian? It doesn't, I think, because there would be some charges in some hospitals that, like especially with corporate, that they would add all of these different charges, like reprinting the medical record or something, but small practices would not. Does that mean one is practicing better medicine than the other? So I think at this point, we have to really look at it. What is really the significance of this conversation? Because if it does not affect the standard of care, then this is more of a business thing that we don't want to be very prescriptive on how our veterinarians are practicing or managing their business.
And just to clarify, this question came from an enforcement analyst to the SMEs. So it wasn't brought up in a standard of care conversation organically between veterinarians. It was brought up, I think.
How to enforce the law.
Yeah, that they were asking us.
So again, the board does not have jurisdiction about the business part of.
This
of
isn't,
the
well,
contract.
but it's a legal issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I apologize because it probably shouldn't have been brought to that group. So I'm sorry for that. It is a legal issue, but at this point, it sounds like, do you want to look at the law to see if we should change it to make it more clear, because the subject matter experts weren't sure on what the answer was?
Go forward, or it ends here? So that's the way I see it, that we have Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, if it's unclear to us, then I think we need to give direction. And I would say that if it is part of our regulation, that a fee not be charged, that's a violation. So that's enforceable. If we need to make that more clear, then I think we need to send it to the board to request that we do more work on it.
Okay, so that's not a motion, but.
Because we don't need one. If we're good with that,
Yeah.
we'll take it forward.
Okay, So I'm fine with it going to the board. Everybody else okay with that?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Sullivan. 'cause if
Okay.
It's the law now. We have to clarify it.
Yes. So like I said, if Tara says it's not clear, then it's not clear. Any public comment on that?
Hello. I'm Grant Miller, the Regulatory Director at the California Veterinary Medical Association. And I definitely think that this topic is one that deserves discussion. Since the passage of AB 1399, California's telemedicine bill, a number of veterinarians have expressed frustration and concern over a particular section of that law. It's 4826.6. And I can get you the exact code section, but it's buried way down deep. And it says the veterinarian shall notify the client that some prescription drugs or medications may be available at a pharmacy. And if requested, the veterinarian shall submit a prescription to a pharmacy that the client chooses. And that has created some significant time sucks in practice, because it used to be that a veterinarian just had to hand the client a prescription and their obligation was fulfilled, and that they had to hand the prescription free of charge. Now I think a lot of them are starting to charge these fees, and they're calling it a record review fee, but what it really is a pharmacy incompetence fee. Because what's happening is they're transmitting them, and the pharmacy says, we didn't get the fax and we didn't get the email, and you call and leave a message and they didn't get it, and now you're spending time on the phone. How many veterinarians have done this, right? 1, 2 RVTs are always stuck doing it. And so they're spending these significant amounts of time trying to just do the simple task of submitting a prescription directly to the pharmacy. And the reason why they're charging a fee is because the law, the statute does not say that that transmission to the pharmacy has to be free of charge. It says you have to provide a written prescription to the client free of charge, but it doesn't say you have to transmit it to the pharmacy free of charge. So I agree with Tara that I think there needs to be a little bit deeper dive into this. And one of the things I would respectfully request is that if we were to take another look at the law, because 4170A6 and 7 is really not our territory. That's pharmacy law. That's for all prescribers. We've fixed regs to the extent we can with 2032-2C. But this section 4826.6, like many other things that got implemented with telemedicine, just did not really fully think through everything that we need to talk about. And so one of the things that I might put forward as a suggestion would be some kind of verbiage that if the veterinarian is transmitting the prescription directly to the pharmacy, that the veterinarian must make and document a reasonable attempt to transmit the prescription to the pharmacy before providing the prescription to the client. Because that's where I think they're charging, is because they're sitting on the phone for hours and hours. So maybe we could get around this by putting in something that says the veterinarian has to just try 2 or 3 times. If it isn't working, they can tell the client, look, here's your prescription, either choose a different pharmacy or go be well in the world with your prescription and good luck to you. Or you can get it from me and we don't charge sales tax on it because we're exempt where the pharmacies aren't. So maybe that could be something that is discussed further if the board decided that they wanted to take a deeper dive into that issue. Thank you.
Moderator, could you open up for public comment on WebEx?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand. If you'd like to make a comment, you can do so by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3. And our first request is coming from Bonnie Lutz. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone. Bonnie, are you with us? Bonnie, I can see that you've unmuted. Justin, will you go down 3 or 4 more slides and show us the audio options slide, please? Bear with us just a moment. We're going to work through this. Bonnie, we're showing instructions on how you can possibly get a hold of your microphone through the audio settings. All right, Bonnie, let's try this again. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a new request to unmute your microphone.
Moderator, are there any other public commenters waiting?
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, then perhaps what we can do, since it sounds like the MDC does want to send this to the board to look further, then I can reach out to Bonnie and get her public comments and share it with, I can send it to the MDC after I receive it, but also to the board so we can make sure that she's included in these discussions future.
All right. Unfortunately, I think that means we need to move on. Thank you so much. There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Yeah, maybe Bonnie can show up to these meetings once in a while.
Bonnie shows up.
Yeah, we miss you, Bonnie.
I would just recommend members and when we present this to the board to really remember that we are a consumer protection agency. And so far the discussions are the negative impacts on the veterinarian and the time sink it is on the veterinarian and whether or not the veterinarian should charge. So please just remember that. And if there's a link to consumer protection, I think that's what we really should focus on.
So we're done with 6. Okay, move on to agenda item number 7. I'll give the report on the outreach subcommittee. Kathy Bowler and I want to thank Jessica and her team who made up a beautiful dog show brochure on reproductive services. It's meant to be given out at dog shows and such. There's a lot of reproductive services that are being done by unlicensed people. And so there's a brochure going out that's being finalized right now with the DCA Public Affairs Office. But I think it's a good step forward. And then also the outreach committee will be working on the new legislation that became effective on January 1. And we'll do research outreach material on that. And I think that's it for the outreach committee. Any public comment
I have
on?
a question for the
Yes,
outreach
Dr.
committee.
Nunez.
Can the outreach committee update its frequently asked questions on who can give a rabies vaccine?
I wrote that down here on my list, yes.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment from the room? Moderator, is there any public comment from WebEx?
We are open for public comment on agenda item 7. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes. Future agenda items.
So members, we have a couple big things that the veterinary practice subcommittee is still working on. They'll be working on the VCPR, I'm sorry, not the VCPR, the licensing manager and the premises registrations, severing that link that we had talked about, that the board has delegated to the MDC, so we're working on that. And then we just mentioned more outreach materials that'll be coming, and then any other agenda items from this committee that you'd like to suggest, please let us know. All of 26 and 27 meeting dates are posted online. And let me pull up just for the 26 MDC meeting minutes, or sorry, meeting dates. You have April 14th, July 14th, and October 13th of 2026, all scheduled to be hybrid and in Sacramento like we have been. Oh, I'm sorry. They're also looking at, still on the table is looking at the medical records and transitioning to requiring them to be done electronically. That is also on the
Okay.
list.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
We don't need a motion, but we need public comment.
Oh, sorry, we need public comment. I keep reading that. Moderator, could you open WebEx for public comment?
Absolutely. WebEx is open for public comment on future agenda items. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment longer to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes.
I will move to adjourn.
Okay. We're adjourned.